Hello, hello, Epic here. Welcome back. And let me first start out by saying thanks for watching and the fact that you are exploring the world of precious metal. It shows that you care about your finance and and you are taking an active role in preserving your wealth, not only for yourself but for your family as well. So, with that, I must applaud you for taking this path, exploring the real money, the gold and silver, and not so called fiat paper currency. And rather, if you are new to precious metal or you've been stacking for a while, then in the world of precious metal, the premium is something that all investor must consider, right? Especially when we talk about the physical precious metal, right? So, so with that, the question becomes, what is premium, and how can we avoid it? And to answer this question, we must first understand what premium is and how it came to be. And you see, the thing is that precious metal, precious metal industry has matured enough to come up with this clever concept of premium to keep the prices at their desirable level to be profitable. In other words, we have a spot price, right? The spot price is the price of a metal. For example, gold currently at 1700 or so. Silver is roughly around $20 per ounce. So, in other words, if we wanted to buy 1 ounce of silver, then you would pay roughly $20 per ounce. At least that is if you are buying silver on your brokerage account, right? We're talking non-physical silver. Now, on the other hand, if you wanted to buy a physical silver, then there is a concept of premium, and that premium is basically additional costs above the spot price. So if the premium is $3 above spot, then the price of 1 ounce would cost $23 in that example. So meaning $20 spot price plus $3 premium, that gets us to $23 for that ounce of silver. So the question becomes, what's the point of spot price if the dealer is going to sell above the spot price, right? And that's a good question. Well, the way I look at premium is premium is essentially their gross margin. That's how I see it. Basically, this is the profit they like to make to keep their operation running. As I mentioned earlier, precious metal industry has matured enough to come up with this concept of premium, which is which makes it easy for buyers to fall into paying above the spot price. Think about it. If they were to use a concept of spot price plus their profit, then all of a sudden every buyer will want to negotiate with them, right? But if suppose if we have what we call premium, then all of a sudden buyers are less likely to negotiate. Hence the premium. So the next time when we are in the coin shop, I would say don't be afraid to negotiate a little. Oftentimes there is a little room, especially if you're buying a big stack. Remember, premium is not a fee. There's no such thing as set premium price. It's all adjustable by business, basically to cover their operating expenses, operating costs, and so forth. So if you go to any big dealer, for example, then chances are you will likely pay a high premium because of their high overhead. But on the other hand, if you were to go to a small shop, then chances are you may there may be less premium due to their lower operating expenses. But on the flip side, another thing to consider is that large dealer will typically get a bigger discount for their high volume, right? So, even with the high operating expenses, prices might still be more competitive. So keep that in mind. Uh, for instance, all the online dealer falls into this criteria. So let's take a look at small coin shop, for example. Suppose its operating expense. Let's consider its operating expense, and for a small coin shop, their typical operating expenses would be something like I don't know. Let's just say $5,000 in rent, maybe $1,000 in utility, internet, phone, security system, light bill, and whatnot. Uh, let's say maybe another $5,000 a month for their labor costs, right? Depending on how many employees they have. Maybe another 3,000 a month for marketing, maybe taxes, insurance, and other operating expenses. So give or take, that gets us to roughly what, $14,000 in monthly expenses. So for that coin shop to stay in business, it needs to make $14,000 in gross profit, right? Gross margin to stay in business. If it doesn't make that 14,000, then that's a net loss, and they'll have to put the money out of their pocket to cover those expenses. So typically, from the business standpoint, it needs to make those, at least in that example, $14,000 in month in profit to cover those expenses. So let's look at their sell. Let's suppose if their sell is, let's just say, 100,000 a month, right? Then their break-even point, in order to cover that $14,000 in expenses, he needs to sell premium. He needs to sell premium, set the premium at what, 14%, right, to break even. So $100,000 in sell, 14% premium would give them that $14,000 needed to cover all that overhead expenses and whatnot to stay in business. But suppose if their sell wasn't 100,000, right, there's a less demand, for example, and their sell was only, is only 50,000 a month, right? Then all of a sudden, this shop may need to increase their premium to 28% to stay in business, right? So 28% of $50,000 would give them a $14,000 in profit needed to stay in business. So you get the idea here, right? So the premium is essentially the gross margin on top of the cost of goods sold. In other words, spot price plus premium. So from the consumer, however, from the retailer perspective, from the average Joe buyer, like myself, normally most people don't pay attention to the premium side of the things, right? They just see the spot price as spot price. They see the premium as a premium, but they don't really consider what's the purpose of a premium. Where does the premium eventually, where did the premium eventually comes from, and what is the premium used for? And in this scenario, right, that 100,000 in sell with the 14% premium would give them that 14,000 in profit needed to break even. Or if only 50,000 a month to sell, they would need to have to set the premium to 28% to stay in business. So, but now that we know what the premium is, right? It's essentially a markup on top of a spot price to cover their business. So most of the time, right, the industry, the precious metal industry, has matured enough to where these shops no longer keeping the premium low just to cover operating expenses, but it's their cash cow. That's how they make money. So and that makes sense. They're in business to make money, right? They buy at certain price, that's their cost, and they sell higher than the cost to make money, and that's how they make money, right? They're in business of selling coins, turnover, to make money. So next time when you're buying silver, don't be afraid to negotiate a little. Chances are depending on supply and demand, depending on their sell, right? There may be room for improving the price of this premium, right? I mean, for example, if that coin shop already made the $100,000 in sell for the going into second week of the month, then chances are that owner may be willing to give you a bit, less, charge you less premium if you ask, right? If you don't ask, then they're just gonna stick with their 14% or 28% and try to make much as money as possible in case if the market goes against him next month, so they have enough room to cover. So don't be afraid to negotiate. That's the point here. One more thing during the negotiation, right? Dealer will often try to convince you that the premium is high because it costs of refining the silver, or there's a cost of minting it, or there's a cost for royalty for certain numismatic coin, or there's a delivery fee and so forth. But at the end of the day, all that is just a BS. It's just a lip job, get you to agree on premium so you can pay more than above the spot price. But look at it this way: the true cost at the end of the day is how much they paid for and how much you are willing to pay for in procuring it, right? And nothing more. I mean, we can try to cut the piece of pie many ways that we want, but at the end of the day, the total cost is the total cost, right? Doesn't matter what the spot price was, doesn't matter what the premium is. Total cost is what you're willing to pay for 1 ounce of coin. Okay, and as I mentioned earlier, premium is their method of marking up above the cost, above the spot price, to be profitable. So as a buyer, be mindful of how much margin that they are charging you in the name of premium, right? The goal is to stay close as possible to spot price, especially for generic silver, right? That it's almost always sold at the melt price, right? So if you were to buy above spot price and then a day later you try to sell that back to a shop, chances are they will only give you what the melt price is. Now, what I meaning the spot price. So the premium that you may have paid is essentially at loss. It's just a sunk cost. You're not gonna get that back. But for the numismatic, however, paying above the spot price is sometimes acceptable because it does have intrinsic value and therefore is typically above the spot price. So, a numismatic coin, even though spot price is $20, you may be able to sell it back above the spot price. So you want to be mindful of what type of silver you're buying, whether it's a generic, whether it's a round, or is it a coin, or is it a bar, depend, and the sizes of it, of course, right? And depending on that, you have to gauge how much premium is acceptable when you're buying it. Now, let's talk about the flip side of this. Let's say if you are a dealer or the coin shop owner, right? Opposite of the buyer or the retailer or average Joe who's trying to stack silver. In this scenario, let's suppose you are the coin shop owner, or you're the guy operating that business, right? In business of buying and selling precious metal. Then the opposite is true now, right? You want to buy close as possible to spot price, but you want to sell higher than spot price to not only cover the expenses of your business operation, but also to make money. So yes, there is a bit of strategy involved, from maintaining inventory shortages, shipment of coming coins, rounds, or bars, or whatnot, and even maintaining risk and hedging against any potential market sell-off or whatnot. So, and I get that, but there has to be right balance. I mean, if the business that charges 50, 60, 80, even more than 100% markup, then it might, in my book, I think that's a bit too extreme. I don't want to call it price gouging, but perhaps there is a lack of competition in the industry that forces them to charge that of the premium. Or maybe there's just supply is not enough, and maybe there's just too much demand, which allows these businesses to charge more way above the spot price. So, but there has to be a right balance, right? As a buyer, you have to determine what's the right premium that you're willing to pay above the spot price. Now, typically, if we were to look at various different industry, right? Uh, Jewelry, for instance, typical acceptable margins are what, 400, 500, even 800% margin. Luxury watches, for example, that has a high margin, and rightly so because it is in the business of luxury. But when we talk about precious metal, right, we're not talking about luxury industry. This is essentially true money, right? This is the money, the energy that you are willing to stack, right? You're willing to let go your fiat currency and convert your fiat currency into a true money, the gold, silver. Then all of a sudden, you have to be mindful of how much can you stack without paying too much for the premium, right? And if we look at any other typical industry, like for example, grocery industry, right? The margin is so low that net margin is just 1%. While some of the most more common industry typically charge 15%, even maybe even 30% is acceptable norm when we get into the question of what is the appropriate gross margin for a given business. Anyway, who am I to challenge how much they can and cannot charge as a their profit margin? But as a buyer, we certainly can shop around for better prices, and always do not hesitate to negotiate. Just ask for a discount. There's nothing wrong with that, and chances are you may just get a better price close to the spot price than you originally thought you could. Remember, there is no such thing as premium price going up and down. It's all subjective based on supply and demand and the buyer's ability to negotiate with the seller on the prices that is different from the spot price.